Hello, welcome to Political Affairs. I am Mamadou Mbouch, sitting in for Aliou Cissé. The State of Affairs, for those joining us for the first time, is a flagship platform for political discussion and hopefully to provide analysis, insight, or as simply as clarification. And I'm joined today by my co-host, of course, Sidi Cissé. But today we've adapted it slightly. Today he's a contributing co-host, Sidi Cissé.
Thanks so much, Mr. Boyd. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll explain why later. Today in our political evolution, is there anything more worthy of discussion than the voter registrations ongoing right now? After all, this will be the first presidential election post-Jammeh, and how well we do it, given past abuses, would be a measure of how far we have come in the New Gambia, and New Gambia there very much in quotations. So far, we've heard some criticism, as it were, or some concerns at least expressed regarding the Alcalo attestations. And we've also got some issues around diaspora voting. So today, to help us discuss some of these issues and more, of course, it will be voter registrations and related matters, electoral relations. Of course, here we've got Mr. Yankuba Dawo, lawyer, political activist and executive member of the United Democratic Party. Mr. Dawo, welcome to the State of Affairs.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, where do we begin? Should we dive in the deep end? I think what we're talking about mostly now is about the Alcalo attestations.
Yes.
What's UDP's view? Do you have any views on it? Any concerns?
I think the Alcalo attestation is a bit of a contentious issue. It's something that which it's helpful in a country like the one we have, where a lot of people do not have national identity documents. So in order not to disenfranchise such people, you need to have a mechanism that is much more easier, such as an Alcalo's attestation that this person was born in my village, and then provide them with that attestation, and that is sufficient to allow them to be able to register for voting. The challenge is that most Alcalos don't know about the laws surrounding nationality in this country. So you can have someone who was actually born in a village, but is not a citizen of the country. And that means he's not eligible to vote because of the fact that maybe his parents immigrated into the village and they did not know that they need to naturalize in order to be able to acquire citizenship. But they assume that because I've been here long enough, I am a citizen automatically. But that is not how it happens. You have to actually apply to naturalize and become a Gambian citizen in order for you to be able to transfer citizenship to your children. So if that parents had not done that, the child is born in the village and the child has been there, attended the schools, and obviously was provided, one would think because the child has a Gambian birth certificate, because he would be entitled to such as a result of being born in that village. But if he failed to acquire that, and most parents do not bother to have birth certificates because they are of the view that if you have medical certificate or the nurse certificate, that is sufficient to prove your citizenship or your right or eligibility to register to vote, which is not the case. And Alcalos are not aware of all of those things. And for them, as long as you are born in the village or they can recall of you being there as a child, they are willing to write that attestation for you. Or most Alcalos don't know every one of the children that are born in their villages. All they know sometimes is that of the parent who lived there for long. So it's a complex issue. It's a very difficult issue because at one point you don't want to disenfranchise a lot of citizens. At another point you want to also avoid fraud, or you want to avoid a situation where people are given these attestations and they are able to register when they are not eligible to do so.
Absolutely, but Mr. Dabo, this is a rather curious one, because there I think what you've pointed out is the general alcalos, we have a lot of them who have not been educated.
That's true.
So the disadvantages they're showing here, these are quite general.
Indeed.
They perform all sorts of functions, but you see, you know,
Yes.
the gaps, they're still in there.
Yeah.
And we have agreed to give them this responsibility.
That's right.
Don't you think that they would have worked with the IEC to put a proper process in place? There are criteria they follow for authentication, and you know, they would have been instructed, they would have been trained, given the guidelines to do these things. Don't you think that sort of thing happened?
I think that would have helped a lot. And then also maybe if the alcalos were provided with, say, secretaries or something, because I think alcalos office, they, as you rightly said, they perform a lot of functions at the moment that most of them are not educated. Most of them are very old. So you definitely need someone who can assist them. And I think the Local Government Act should cater for a salaried person who is educated to be able to assist them with this. And then maybe the alcalos should also have a registrar in their village of people who are born in the village, people who migrated, what years they migrate, what sort of documents they have. If they have such registers or they have access to such data, it helps them with these attestations much more easier. I think this year, the IEC, if I get this right, I think the IEC have provided, they provide their own attestation document, which you fill it at the IEC desk or the registration desk. And then you take that to the alcalo, you explain it to the alcalo, and the alcalo confirms it by attesting to the facts that are stated in that document.
But this is it. What is the process of attestation? Is it that they just come, I ask you a few questions, you can tell me anything, and on the basis of that, I negotiate that? Or does it mean that I have to consult this, I have to consult that, I have to confirm this? So the precise process it takes, if I come as a person, I bring this attestation, what do you do? And afterwards, perhaps, would the IEC official have the power of saying, nope, there are certain oddities? I mean, how much must they just take? Or would they have an approval, as it were, role, a filtering role when it comes back? That
Unfortunately, they do not have such a role. So what happens is that that's what the political party agents are there for. So if they notice or if they are able to recognize or identify someone as someone who is not eligible and then came with an alcalos attestation, they can take note of that and then channel it through their party, whatever complaint system. And then the party can then make an application to the revising courts. And then they can bring their evidence to prove that that person is not eligible for registration. I think there is a fine of 200,000 for alcalo for making such attestation. And we've seen in Far Out where police are saying that they've arrested 7 people. So unfortunately, there isn't such mechanism before getting the document, before acquiring the voter's card. But there is a channel of challenging it once you acquire it to say that you are ineligible, and then you should not be entitled to such document, and having it is you obtain it through fraudulent means, and that then involves an alcalo. The alcalos process, the ones that I've witnessed, is that they would ask you, who is your father and who is your mother? If they can recall your mother and father, then they are like, when were you born? Sometimes they might ask that. But even if you tell them, the alcalos, as I said, many of them, the problem they have is that of the fact that they are not literate. They are not educated. They are not literate. That's the best way to qualify it. And if you are able to take those questions or queries, then they are happy to write the statement for you. But if not, they will be like, oh, well, I am not happy to, or I'm not going to do this because I am not certain that you are a native of this village or you are qualified.
So it's not really stringent enough as far as you are concerned?
Not at all.
Sidi,
yes.
so that's it. You've listened and no doubt you've read reactions and the rest sort of thing in other media. What do you make of it? Not stringent enough? And by the way, you are today a contributing co-host because we were supposed to be joined by someone else. As people would know, people who have been watching us, we have like 4 people on set, 2 guests and 2 hosts. So today, the other guest couldn't come because in the last minute, the 11th hour, his car broke down. I mean, don't you just hate it when that happens?
I do. But I always had a reservation for your guests anyway. Maybe they didn't want to face us. With the issue of this attestation, this is not new. You know, if you go back in the First Republic, we have this. At a time when voters' cards were two-fold. You remember when they were brown two-fold? And have a picture and they stick it there with a stapler? Right, maybe Yanks can't remember that. So we had attestation at the time. And let's fast track. When we came to 1996, when the whole process came after the junta ban all political activities, where there were attestations too. When we had the provisional electoral office, it wasn't actually an independent electoral office. We had the alcalo with 5 elders, you know, to actually do this attestation. For some reason, those in power thought wasn't a good idea at the time. Probably there were certain challenges and difficulties for Mr. Mboj to go down to Carnivine East to see the alcalo and 5 other elders. This amendment came in where it is only the alcalo. The problem right now I have, when I visited some of these polling voter centers, there is a bulk of papers from the IEC, big ball writing attestation form.
Yeah.
You Yankuba come, they just pull it out and give it to you. You just trek a mile to the alcalo's house and they come back with it, with been attested already. So, like Mr. Dabo said, the alcalo, the process that they do, they just ask you, who is your father? Or which compound do you live? And I've seen where some of these people who go with this attestation have been escorted by political agents.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, what is it? Are we against sort of alcalo attestations in principle? Because that is really part of our governance, isn't it?
Against it.
It's part of our governance system, isn't it?
I'm against it because I think it is not moving the country forward democratically and as a society.
Okay, so
because I would have thought after all these years, we would have come up with a better mechanism of actually making people have their voters card in the rightful manner, in a manner that will be very transparent, and then no one will be coerced into providing an attestation for anybody.
But that is exactly my point. Yeah. See, that was why I was trying here to make a distinction between the principled one, which you don't want it at all, or the other practical, the more pragmatic one. What about we have good structures, have certain processes in place that they will have to follow, in which case we just want to sort of modernize, as it were, organizationally, the institution of the alcalo. So which one is it?
We must have the alcalos as an entity to be an institution,
all right,
where we'll have proper data in place for the alcalos, for them to be aware everything that is going on in terms of land registry. That has to be there. Many of the cases in court today about land is because one alcalo have given Mr. Boje land, Mr. Dabo land, Mr. Sise land, the same piece of land because of no record.
That's right.
So that's not an alcalo that you can trust to say Mr. Dabo is a Gambian.
Gambian, indeed.
And I have seen at IEC registrations where, you have a queue where people are just pulling their hands behind and say, give me attestation.
Yes.
And they're just, just giving the form like giving sweets to kids.
Yeah.
So really, there's a need for us to look into this.
Indeed.
It may be late because, unfortunately, we are using the old laws, and that you and I and everyone else have made queries about this electoral law, that it needs to be looked at properly, but it's too late because the process is on.
Is it also our distrust, as it were? Don't we think that perhaps the IEC, which is ultimately the body responsible ultimately for all of this, the voter registrations and the elections, don't you think that they would have had a good monitoring system in place? After all, they are the ones ultimately responsible.
Definitely. No, what should have happened? I agree with Sidi. These alcalo attestations have been here forever. They should be bit archaic now. They should be outdated now. We shouldn't be dealing with alcalos doing the attestations now. What we should have by now should have been proper data, birth records, and then naturalization and every record. There should be a record office in each region where what the individual need is not the attestation. If you were born in that region, you go to the local area council or the governor's office at the birth record or whatever record center. You just tell them, I want a record to prove that I am a Gambian either through naturalization or by birth. And then they just provide your record. That is the record you should have gone with to the IEC registration desk and then show them authentic document from the government stating that I am a Gambian, this is my birth certificate, or this is my record of citizenship, or how I acquired my nationality, or any of this. It's something like that. But it should be a record that which is available and accessible to the public. Public should just go there and seek for a record. It is provided to them. They just go to the IEC and present it. Rather than you just show up with no evidence. Because the Alcalo, remember, the Alcalo is the one providing you with evidence. He doesn't have no evidence that you're providing to him except what you're telling him.
But this is the point. He should have evidence of his own, as it were,
no, exactly.
before he can endorse it, before he can authenticate it.
Some of these Alcalos are
like
probably your age group. My age group.
Yes.
I've seen Alcalos that I'm far older than.
Yes.
Yes,
You know,
but
so imagine somebody walking from his house, in his 60s, and comes to me and said,
I was born here.
I was born here.
True, but if you have a sound process in place, it doesn't
That's
matter
what we are saying.
how old
Yeah.
I
That's
am.
what we're saying.
So one would follow
One would
certain
have thought if we had,
steps
say,
before I
village
authenticate.
council elders or whatever, but this must be non-partisan people.
Yeah.
And that's what is difficult to get now.
Yeah.
Because if you go to most of these, registration centers, the political parties are there. They all have stakes in. And most of these people have interests.
Yeah.
Who is giving attestation? How quickly can they, facilitate attestation? And how quickly can they get their voters card? Because for them, they're in a battle. That's what I've seen.
Yeah.
None of them are doing it because for love for country, for making sure we have the eligible people in our voter register. No, they are doing it because I want to have the upper number in the voter register so that when it comes to the election, I may come out.
And
Haven't we heard? Well, I read on social media somewhere that some kids who didn't have the required age were found with these cards they had registered. I'm not sure how much we've heard so far. What's going on?
Again, to be fair to the Alcalos, the challenge they have is they're only relying on what the informer is giving them, the information they're being provided with. They, as Sidi said, some of them are too young to have witnessed the birth of certain elderly people. So if that person tells them I was born in 19 God knows when, they would have to go by that because they have no other evidence to counter that. This is the challenge that the Alcalos have. They will say, he was here before I was born. Who am I to say that he was not born here? And as Sidi also stated, which is quite a concern, that is that some of these Alcalos, when you go to land dispute, you find that they are so incredible. They provide all kind of details to land documents or transfer documents to all sort of people over the same land. If one has to rely on the same Alcalos information on eligibility to vote, then we have an issue. And the reason why these attestations are a big issue, like there's a saying in Mandinka that if a kangaroo, which is the kangaroo masquerade, kills your mom, if you see an ant's hill, you would run. We have had history of people who are not citizens being registered, and then all kind of gerrymandering have happened here. That has now sort of instilled this fear in a lot of people that if we don't protect our national documents or these attestations, then people who are ineligible could end up voting, and they might end up voting for someone else who we do not want to lead us.
Granted. But now, Sidi, I'm sure that everything you've said, that how these things should be run, maybe in the election after that, but this time the situation is as it is, isn't it?
Yes.
What do we do? Political parties, for instance, have a lot of role here, civil society, to monitor the system.
You see, Mr. Mboj, sometimes I wonder, and the reason being, we have seen political parties in this country for the longest time. And they are stakeholders, and they are government in waiting. But I then ask myself, are they serious political parties? Because we have seen the draft, or you may call it the 2020 election bill that's supposed to go before the National Assembly. To my dismay, I've seen the itinerary for the next sitting of 14th of June. It is not in the itinerary. So it means it's not going to be before the Assembly. And there have been so much work that was done to put that together, so much consultation, validation, getting all this IPC, the Inter-Party Committee, and all other stakeholders, the civil society, all this have been involved. At the 11th hour, it is not going to be before them, unless they do magic.
Do you have
So
any idea what's going on?
I question whether the political parties actually are not serious in the real game at play, or they are aside from just confronting the issue.
But what have the political parties got to do with this? Because somebody has to table it. Who is the person
not
responsible
actually for the political parties to push for it to be tabled. They must put their foot down. This is our demands, and this is what we wanted. You see, let's go back a bit. When Jammeh was here, these were the political parties who were crying foul that they need an electoral reform. Have they seriously taken that up? It is not done. So probably what they don't want at the time was Jammeh's face. So once Jammeh's face have disappeared, we are comfortable with everything that is going. That's why today we are registering with the old laws.
We'll hear from UDP.
Yes. No, what happened is, I think the media has not been covering our stamping on the ground on some of these issues.
Okay.
But I believe that at inter-party level, especially the UDP representative that we have there, Maud Sarr and the Yakumba and others who were there, they were actually banging on the IEC on some of these things, especially with this election bill. In fact, I remember Maud Sarr telling me, I was telling Alieu Mahmoud Job that you are not going to be able to conduct the electoral registration in this new electoral bill if it is not before the parliament, if it's not before parliament now. And this was somewhere in around January. You see, and they've been banging on that issue, that this bill needs to go out there. But we've seen what happened. The IEC came out, they said the bill that the AG Chambers presented was actually contained some issues that they never were aware of or consented to.
Yeah, they had to withdraw
so
it.
It had to be withdrawn. So that, I don't know, but that was the fault of the AG Chambers. And it has now affected the conduct of the whole process because it delayed, and then also the government had some portion of blame in this, because you remember with regards to the awarding of the contract for registration of the voters card, the company that the IEC preferred, the government said no, it didn't go through the proper procurement process, and then all kind of issues, and that delayed, because the IEC's original plan was that registration of voters card in the country would have taken place from January, I believe, January 13th to the 23rd of February. And this period should have been the registration of diaspora. But look at where we are now. We are at what should have happened in January is 6-7 months late.
We'll come to the diaspora element. So here, what do you think is going on? Do you think that the government is delaying? And if the government is delaying, why? What advantage is it to the government?
I think from an opposition standpoint, I think what the president's advisors probably believe at the time, because we had this from the grapevine, that they were advising the president that if we can stall the election and even postpone it, we will be able to extend your mandate. God knows how they're going to do that, because the mandate cannot be extended in that way. But they had that belief at some point, because they discussed it with some people. Someone even queried it with me, that is it possible under the laws for the president's mandate to be extended without holding election? I said to him, it's impossible. It cannot happen, because he's given a 5-year mandate. And that 5-year mandate is supposed to end on the 18th of January 2022. At that point, if we are not able to hold any election, or have not been able to hold any election, then the Speaker of National Assembly becomes the interim president until we are able to hold elections. But I think they did not understand this earlier on. They were of the view that we can drag our feet on so many things and delay the whole process until we get to December, and there wouldn't be no election and the president can automatically be here for God knows how long. I said, look, they should have learned that from Jammeh. Jammeh tried it through the courts and it was impossible. He tried to extend his mandate through the courts or National Assembly declaring a state of emergency, but it didn't work.
What do you make of that? What do you make of that theory?
Probably
what do you make of that?
Whether it's a UDP thing, I don't know, whatever.
It's not a UDP
Whether the Barrow State House thought of that, I'm sorry, that's impossible. These are things that are impossible. And I'm glad that they've realized that. But the issue now, my brother is a legal-minded person, and I think he would weigh into this. But what I understand on the technicalities now, when I looked at the bill that is supposedly supposed to be in the assembly, if it had gone to the assembly and had been an act of for this election process, means all the registration that we are doing, we're going to be null and void. And then what we now make of that is automatically that bill is not going to go before the National Assembly because the process is already on. The voter registration is on. So you cannot go into the assembly and make a law that is going to actually question the process that you've just done.
Okay, let me ask. Let's go to the lawyer here.
Yeah.
So, what difference would it make whether we enact the bill or not? How would it affect the elections?
What happened is, you see, these are the drafters, the legal drafters at the AG chambers would be able to accommodate the current settings that we have. So the current registration in the new legislation, they can say that the voters card registered between so and so are considered as if done under this legislation and therefore would be valid from henceforth. That would suffice that,
So
that
as far as
anomaly.
you're concerned, there is no problem. There is no problem as far as you're concerned.
What is said is possible,
It's possible.
but it's not already in the bill.
It's not there. It's good that CD raised it because I think that would trigger some
It's
heads.
not there.
But they can put it in there even after the registration. They can put it in there.
But the issue we have now,
Before
when
it
they
is-
sit, when they sit the 14th of June, and they wrap up, the next time they will be sitting is September, sometime mid-September.
Yeah.
September to December is 3 months. What does the ECOWAS law says in terms of amending electoral laws? It's not possible 6 months.
No.
So
that's
automatically,
There is this-
hypothetically, this is something definitely
not going to happen. Yeah.
not going to happen.
It looks very much likely that we are going into the elections under the old laws rather than the new laws. I think the new laws would happen maybe at the next election, but not this time around.
What are the implications?
Well, the implications from our party's perspective is that the current government had failed. These are some of the things that they should have been able to implement long time ago. For the fact that this is part of the reforms that they promised the Gambian people of. And then for them to fail at doing that, we would say is a clear testimony to the Gambian people that they are not supposed to be entrusted with the mandate again to run this country. That's what our party would say.
Absolutely, that is one argument. But for us, Siri, I imagine that the questions for us would be, how would it affect the freeness or fairness of the elections? The failures of policy, one thing, but for us, as far as we are voters, we are concerned, how would it affect the freeness or fairness of the elections?
Yeah,
Going by the old rules.
I will just go back to what Mr. Dabo said. I cannot single out this present sitting government, that's President Barrow and his team, and just throw this to them. I think UDP and all the other stakeholders, as opposition parties, coalition parties, must take responsibility because there was something before them. They knew very well. It is not like they just jump off the bus and trying to look for a taxi nearby. They had a message for us when they were going around. They had a program. We knew all what was there. And when they came, something went wrong. And that is to say, UDP and Barrow is ours.
But come on,
So
Siri,
come on. We see.
But tell him we were dropped out of the bus.
How
We
long
didn't have
before
a
they
say
get
how
dropped out of the bus? 2 years. So failure to plan is planning to fail. There weren't any plans for us to see ourselves in a progressive way of getting ourselves out of the mess that Jammeh put us in our election.
But see, isn't this really the nature of democratic party politics? Different interests. It is a very messy process.
Yeah,
the whole platform of unanimity, as it were, it's easier to do that when you are in opposition. Now, after this coalition came into power, they had to contend with the pressures of power. It's an entirely different ballgame.
Absolutely. But Mr. Boyd, this was a project. It is a project. They had a project before them. They had a project document before them. They had to deliver, and they all failed.
Project, okay, fine. But project based on party politics, I'm not sure
It's
how.
not in party politics.
But
that's why we went to a convention for the person who is leading the convention to resign from a political party. So it's supposed to be an agenda that suits everybody.
No, but
that was-
deliver.
That was more of a gesture, more of a symbol than anything else.
But
What do you
the
think
agenda
of it?
changed along the way, obviously from
Maybe they changed the agenda.
No, we never participated in that change because obviously the change was in effect against us, and that's why we could not have played
How was
any
it
part in
against you, Mr.
Because
Dam?
you can you look at the whole formation of the president's current party. It was all based on going after the UDP. That was the reason why you had to go after to convert their sitting National Assembly members to join the president against them. The whole campaign is against the UDP.
Barrow registering his party just happened recently.
No,
Okay.
no.
So you guys were together.
When was the
and
party-
your party leader had made statements. And those statements to say to the whole world, Barrow is our Barrow. One. And Barrow had made statement, that's my godfather. And I quote him saying, only a bust eye would see Barrow and UDP falling apart or falling out.
But you know, you have
But
to-
we have seen that. And
You
all
have-
of us are watching now. No one eye is
you have
busted
to
yet.
you have to contextualize these things.
That's
They
it.
happen.
Let's
you know.
suspend that contextualization until we come back from a very short break. We're going to really. Viewers, don't go away. We'll be back right in a moment. Welcome back to the program. I'm Mamadou Mbodj. I'm sitting in for Aliou Cissé. Today we're talking about voter registration. Is there anything more worthy of discussion? I'm with my co-host, Sidi Cissé, who is today a contributing co-host, and Mr. Yankuba Dabo, an executive member of the UDP. So, Mr. Dabo, just before we went on break, you were contextualizing there.
Of course. So, so what I was saying is that when our party leader made those remarks, obviously they were true at the time. Barrow was indeed our Barrow. It was UDP. You know what I mean? It is Barrow who changed. We remember when Barrow started saying, if I am a sitting president, anybody who is vying for my position at the next election, you're more or less planning a coup d'etat against me. So this is where everything went wayward. It went south from the trajectory that we were supposed to be pursuing. Now, we cannot be blamed for what Barrow did when Barrow left us. And remember, we were dropped out of Barrow's bus 2 years in the project. They had 3 years thereafter to do whatever they want to do. We had no say in the direction of the bus, where the bus was going. We can only stand out there and say, look, the driver is blind. He is going to crash this bus. For those that are in the bus, with the hope that they will understand and listen carefully. But that hasn't happened.
Okay,
But the reality is very simple.
So it seems as if maybe at the point when they realized that the driver was blind, they didn't see
We
it
were
from the
out there.
beginning. That was interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Out there.
they disembarked.
They
That's what they're
disembarked,
saying
but
right now.
they did not disembark. They were fired.
And they were pushed out of the bus, were
I would
they?
have thought morally and for sincerity and respect for what we all fought for, all of us, the whole Gambia, your party leader, your party surrogates who were in government would have put their hand on and say, you know what, we don't want to be part of this anymore. This guy is taking a complete wrong turn.
No. You know.
But that wasn't done. They allowed themselves to be fired.
No. You know what you have.
Were you allowing yourself to be fired so that you can get sympathy votes?
No, we entered into the coalition because of the national cause. We would have been
But there are others who choose not to be part of it in the first
No, remember,
place.
before we left the boss was pursuing the national development agenda. That is what the whole thing was going. They needed to offload us in order to divert. They could not have done that with us in the bus because we will not accept it. So we became a thorn in their flesh. That's why they got
Where
rid
was
of us.
wisdom? Where was wisdom then?
The wisdom was there. But remember, we would not jump on anything that is about the development of the Gambia. That is what this party set off to do from the outset. That was the foundation stone of our party.
But
we
surely-
stood against Jammeh.
You saw this coming.
No,
Mr.
we stood
Dabo.
against Jammeh No, we could not have foreseen all these things happening.
There were a lot of things going on.
No, we were not. We remember we were not getting a message from an angel from God telling us that this is what is going to happen in the future. So we could not have foreseen it. What we have seen at the time was that things were normal. Honorable Amadou Sane, who was the finance minister, was ensuring that. In fact, one of the things that Barrow said why he had to get rid of Amadou Sane, in fact, he was telling people that Amadou is so wicked that Amadou wants to control the food that he is eating.
But you have to accept this. You have to accept this. This is really quite curious. You said that you disembarked, by the time he had taken the wrong turn. But really,
no, they offloaded us.
We do not want to belabor the point, but genuinely, when your leader came out and said, these people had agreed a coalition. They had had certain agreements for 3 years and all of that. He wasn't part of it. Then afterwards, when he joined and he came, he made those threats, and people saw it as a threat that if he want to enforce that clause, we started playing these legalistic games, the moral and the legal, that sort of thing. That was serious error. It was, some people will say that it wasn't politically astute for one to do that, given the nature of politics. There are no permanent friends, only permanent interests.
Indeed. And that's a point noted. We've had that thrown at us a lot of time. But let us be clear. At the time, the same media that turned around and said, you said this, you said that, it was the same media that was saying that our leader did not support Barrow going beyond 3 years because he was eyeing for the seat himself. This was, in fact, the first time he did that response. It is available on YouTube. The first time our leader responded to that, it was a question posed by the media saying, is it not the case that you are eyeing for the position? That's why you are not willing to tell Barrow to go, or you are willing to tell Barrow to go after 3 years. This was the position, and he responded by saying that if anybody wants to force Barrow to adhere to the 3 years thing, I will be willing to defend him in court. That's what he said. It was a response. That's why I said contextualizing these things helps a lot, because obviously people don't want to forget about what was the traction then, what was gaining traction then, and they want to just go on to say, your leader made a terrible mistake, he's the one who emboldened Barrow, he did this and that and that.
Absolutely.
But that is not the reality. We all know.
Okay, it seems as if we are never going to agree on that, but quite still interesting context there. Miss Sidi, let's listen here to the so-called Alcalo attestation. So let me put it this way generally. Given what the issues are regarding these attestations, how big an issue is it? How would it, for instance, affect the balance of fairness? How significant an issue is it?
It will really affect, because right now, what is actually happening is resources is at play. If you can mobilize people, get them to the polling, the registration centers, get them attestation, drive them to the Alcalo, get their papers, and come and get voters card, possibly Mr. Dabo can do that. So when you go back to, like I said, in the First Republic, those efforts were there. They were bringing people to get them registered. Serekunda East, Kombo North, you name them. We've seen it in the First Republic. And we have seen it in the Second Republic. And it's the same game that is on. There will be an issue here, because you probably don't, some political parties will not be able to mobilize the foreign resources and the logistics to be getting people to get their attestation.
Well, some people will say that if they cannot afford to do that, they have no business being a political party when what is being realistic.
It should not be. That should not be the thing in the first place.
That is true. Ideally, it wouldn't. But in reality, we have to deal with the reality as we find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, money matters in politics.
I think the whole issue is not NPP or other parties. It's the question about political parties that have real structures are doing everything to get people registered, or to take records of people who they have suspicion that they are not entitled to get those voters cards, and they will be taken into the revising court.
So this brings us really here, given the situation, to personal responsibility.
Yes,
surely.
Indeed.
The individual, political parties, groups. So it comes back to responsibility, doesn't it?
My other issue here for Mr. Dabo is, I wanted to know the position of your party, because you are part of the Inter-Party. You just named few people here who were part of that process. We have seen in the draft bill, you actually raise the deposit because we remember in 2007, you guys, whatever you did, you worked with the APRC parliamentarians and reduced the deposits. And then we found the speaker as the ambassador in South Africa. So whatever happened there is history. But we know that was a deal.
Deal? What deal?
That was a deal.
We could not have had a deal with the APRC at the time.
Oh, but we saw the speaker as an
It comes with the turf, my friend. It comes with the turf.
Right. They amended the 50,000 to 10,000. Right. And the councillorship also reduced. And here we see ourselves again and find ourselves in a situation where they went in and they came back with the same thing that they amended. What was the position of your party? Were you interested in reducing then, because you don't have a good bank account, now you feel you are comfortable, you have a good bank account, you want to marginalize Mr. Mboj, who probably wants to be an independent candidate.
But absolutely, and can afford it.
And can afford it.
I'm not privy to that information. But
what information?
The information about our party's position at the inter-party meeting.
You said, Mr. Who?
Yes, because I did not.
He told you what he said to Mr. Njai,
but that was
chair.
in relation
but this
to
is
the
talking
bill
about
passing.
the deposit. From 10,000, you raise it to 50,000.
Yes, that's what I mean.
That's what I mean.
So I'm not aware about. I'm not cognizant of our position on the deposit issue. I was talking about the bill.
Yeah.
So what does Yankuba Dabo think about this very thing of changing the deposit from this amount to another amount? What do you make of that?
I think with regards to the so many smaller parties just registering every day, CD just jumping up and then setting up his own political party, I think we should go to the million.
Oh, so you wanted to price out, as it were, some parties?
It's not it's not pricing out, but
I mean, what else?
Some people are taking it for a joke. We have the Rastafarians are talking about Rastafarian party, weed, legalized weed and all that stuff. It's a serious
but
business.
It is their right. It is their right to register.
Of course it is.
I mean, democracy doesn't really. I don't think it makes much moral judgment. I think it's merely about participation.
So we come back taking it seriously, and
we need it a bit more serious. I think.
But then why then you change it then?
But the market will.
Why you change it then? You change it from 50,000 to 10,000. At the time you didn't have any money.
Have you heard Kitabu wants to set up his own party?
No, let's forget about the Kitabus and the Rastafari.
So the thing is,
principle,
we want serious people in politics because politics has been redundant.
Mr. Baba, in principle, why did we have to reduce from 50,000 to 10,000, and now why are we going to 50,000?
Because you have to understand, Jammeh was abusing the whole process then, and obviously now the laws can never be fixed. They always change, depending on the circumstances that you are facing. Obviously, the other thing is we encourage every person, every citizen to engage in politics, to set up it's their constitutional right to freedom of association, to associate themselves with whatever they want. But we want serious people to take politics serious. If you believe that you really, really want to be the president of this country and to lead this country, I think whatever the price is, you should be willing to put the money there.
And he said he wants serious people, but that's such a value judgment. Yeah. The market determines seriousness.
Yes.
Let's open it as widely as possible, then the market will determine who is serious, who isn't serious. That's what I mean by the electorate. That's the market. The electorate will decide.
The problem we have, the challenges the IEC faces, if you open it to, let's say, everybody just setting up their own political party.
We are not talking about political parties here. We are also talking about the nomination deposits as well.
No. What I'm saying is, if every person is, say, wants to just nominate themselves without putting a price there, you know what will happen? The IEC logistically would face a huge challenge because you're talking about, we don't have one ballot box where you just tick whatever you need to, whichever candidate you want to do. You have boxes. So you're talking about maybe 200 boxes for a particular region.
Are you saying this in
200 candidates?
So the logistics.
Let's look at what the Constitution has said. You have a right to elect and to be elected. That's
Yes,
your right.
indeed.
That's your fundamental right.
Of course.
Whether IEC have a logistical nightmare, that is their problem.
But you
every
have a-
Gambian 18 or above have a right to be elected or to elect.
See,
so
look
why
at
is-
look at a big democratic state like United States. They have only two major parties, two big
that's
parties.
America. We are Gambia.
And then we, you can have your right to be elected and elect in a political party that is there. Those that are in there. You can even influence those political parties to change their policies, principles, and so many other things. Why can't you do that? But if you said, I don't like anything that these people are saying, I need to come and set up my own.
But we have
because
seen Trump in America.
And no, the
it
key-
costs me so cheap.
True,
it is so
but here's the
easy
key
to
thing.
do so. What I'm saying, logistically, we have a nightmare. It is going to be very
But
difficult
we are not
for the
going to
IEC.
continue using marbles, I think, for
No,
some time.
we'll come to
Well,
that.
well,
Yeah,
we'll come to that.
we'll come to that.
Don't try that
But
one now.
here, surely the issue is this.
Yeah.
We have to take our politics, our societies as we find them in many ways. I mean, you take the US, the point you were making, or even the whole West in many ways, you've got that political ideology. The society had moved to that.
Yeah.
You've got that left-right
Right and
kind
center,
of spectrum.
exactly, yes.
We do not have that.
No.
So we have to take our reality as we find it
Of course.
in many ways.
Yeah.
So when we want to impose some of these values, not bad, as it were, because we have to shape it with values, but let us understand that exactly what we're doing.
Yes, of course, yes.
Let's understand
course, yes,
exactly
yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're trying to remove this. Let's move on a bit. We said about the diaspora. I've read, what do you make of this? This was around early April. Got this quote from Sambujang Njai, I think he's the CEO of the IAC. It is in the Commission's plans to register the diaspora. I can assure you that the IAC is very committed and ever ready to ensure that the diaspora are given the opportunity to vote. We didn't include them in the recent calendar because we want to conclude with the domestic registration first, after which we will communicate the date for the diaspora registration. Now, let's go to May. Ending of May, here is the IEC chairman. You have 53 constituencies, and these are limited to Gambians here in the Gambia. For them to be able to vote as diasporans, there has to be a change in the constitution. Because they are planning to have 5 constituencies abroad, and unless this law is changed, it remains they cannot be it remains that they cannot really vote. Now this is very interesting. You mean when Sambujang Njai was saying this, he didn't know that there was a law that they had to change? Sidi, what did you make of that? I'm quite baffled here.
We go back to the issue of IEC. It looks as they have a problem because there are people out there who have fantasy, but these fantasies are not related to reality. It was everybody's wish to say we want to see Gambians in the diaspora, the youngs and others who keep, drumming on Facebook, we will be voting. Great.
We have to vote.
We have to vote. Great. But the mechanisms weren't there. This planning should have been from January 2017. The preparation wasn't done. At some point, you even ask yourself, are we really serious? It's like everything is fine. Let's just ride as it is. Because there was actually no effort. All the talks that they're doing, but it was not backed by deeds. And that's the IEC, and that's the government. And that government included the UDP and the rest. Because, one would ask, what did they do in terms of bringing diaspora on board as far as our democratization is concerned?
Now, Mr. Dabo, your party, you've been implicated in something here. What is your defense, or at least your mitigating argument?
And our defense is very simple. We are not part of the government. We are outside of the government. So no matter how they try to put us in the government, we are not. The government had frustrated the IEC. That's the best way to put it.
Isn't this really still a coalition government, isn't it? Is this a coalition government?
I think they call it NPP government.
No, but it's not. We never voted in MPP.
Indeed, but that's how the government perceives itself as being an MPP
But
government.
technically, isn't it still a coalition government?
Yes,
Maybe
and his party leader was a
certain
foreign
things have
minister for
changed.
2 years.
It is the coalition government of the parties left in the coalition, or whatever the government is.
All right.
The ones that have already been evicted from there
Mr.
are
Dabo,
not
with
part of the
hindsight,
coalition.
what do you think UDP as a party who were part of the coalition should have done to include diaspora in this present voter registration?
Well, obviously, if it is the UDP government, one of the things we would have done is that we would have made sure that the electoral bill that the IEC wanted to introduce should have, or by now would have passed through Parliament. That would have been we would have put much of our concerted effort in that to make sure that that happens. I think the government fails at that because they dilly-dallied and they dragged the IEC backward, and there was a back and forth between them as to this awarding of that contract, which delayed almost 6 months of everything. And I think that was terrible. And they should have, in fact, been the ones on IEC's doors, and they will be knocking on it to say that this is a promise we made to the Gambians. The diaspora had been
what do you think
disenfranchised for so long.
You talked about government frustrating the IEC. What do you think is there for them? You cannot do things that nothing is there
because
for you.
The government lost hope in anything in the diaspora vote for them. They do not believe that they would even get maybe 10, 20,000 or 10 or 100 votes from the diaspora. I don't think they believe that. And I think that is the reason why they are not interested in the diaspora voting.
Well, this is interesting. There you're talking about the government.
Yeah.
But again, is the IEC part of that agenda to frustrate this? Because it seems to be implicit in what you're saying.
No, you know what
the government can be one thing, the IEC another. The IEC is an independent body.
You see, the problem with IEC is they depend on the government to introduce their legislation in Parliament for them. If the AG Chambers is not doing that for them, it's very difficult for them to be able to do it. They literally depend on the government, even though they are a bit of an independent body of themselves. They depend on the government for funding and financing and a lot of other things. So
that's the leverage.
That is the leverage the government has over them.
So it has.
Exactly.
Absolutely. We really coming towards the end. I'm just going to combine here 2 questions. We said it before. Paper, marble, there was some issue about that. And the youth, we've heard some reports that they're not seeing a good number of youths going to register. They seem reluctant. They're not going.
I have gone around the last, over the weekend. And I'm very disappointed. Maybe it's the earlier phase. They would show up. But the signs that I've seen are not promising as far as the young ones are concerned. I think we found ourselves in a society where many of the young ones want to be babysit. They can whinge, they can complain, they can mourn, but to take the matter up, it seems they are not interested. They're happy sitting at the street corners brewing attire, asking for the, whatever they can get from Mr. Mboj or Mr. Dabo. I mean, Mr. Dabo from Brikama, Kafuta, I think you should go out there and ask them to go and get vote. And everyone else.
Absolutely, but you see, really, yes, one can look at it that way, but to others, what some of these people are doing, things are not that unreasonable. They do not see any stake
for them
in what they do. They do not see it at all. We all see our society as how skewed society is.
That's true. But today, let's say, for example, the NPP or the UDP wants to go out and they bring their T-shirts and their trucks and their buses. These young ones are happy to jump in with the music and all the fanfare. But when they say go and get a voter's card, they won't get it.
So when you want to create a carnival for things, of course people will come and join you. Absolutely, but that's not necessarily.
Maybe the IEC should start drumming carnival for the young ones to come.
But it doesn't necessarily translate into votes, does it? So it doesn't work like that.
These are the marbles and the ballot papers.
Finally. So I think IEC, as I said, it seems like they've been caught off guard with the registration this year. Because normally the campaign to get people out there to register is a lot more than what we're seeing at present. We don't have those music clips or songs being produced by some of the big known singers in the country coming up with tunes that are encouraging the boys or the youths to go out there and register, to educate them about. So the campaign there, it was lacking. I don't know whether the funding is not there, but it shows. I would put the whole blame on the government. I'll say the government
absolutely
is
that's what the UDP
one
will say.
responsible. Yes,
Thank you very
they have
much.
not been motivating enough.
Yeah, we've come to the end. I think it's everybody's business to motivate others, all political parties as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Yankuba Dabo, for your views there. Yeah,
Thank
fantastic.
you.
And Sidi, thank
so
you very much. And our viewers, of course, thank you for joining us. Until next time, from State of Affairs, goodbye.